Hey guys, Ryan here. I just got done watching the NASCAR Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium, along with all the heat races and the LCQ, and we're going to talk about all of it and more on this episode of Running with the Pack. So yes, as I said in the intro, I just got done watching a very full weekend of racing at Bowman Gray Stadium, and we have got ourselves a lot to talk about, so we're going to get right into it, starting with night one, the heat races, or at least what I got to see of the heat races, in addition to replays that I've seen so far. Honestly, again, it looks like just a less grippy version of the Clash, which, to its credit, was kind of the one major problem a lot of people had with the Clash at the Coliseum was that it was very grippy. Now, the bottom lane was still superior, and I think that came in very evident tonight because in 20 lap runs there was no time to really wait or try and get single file, but with 100 laps in each run, even though it was broken up by caution flags for the first half, and the second half also had some caution flags in it, so we didn't have any pure 100 lap runs to the checkers, but no, with the long run, we could see on multiple restarts, drivers basically, especially early in the run, basically just get into single file line as quick as possible and just try and ride for a while, which again was a similar problem to what the Clash had over the last couple of years. And I think that's just going to be a baked in problem of quarter mile racing, and that's why I never really liked the stadium concept as a actual race idea. Although I do think the racing here at Bowman Gray was a little better than the racing at the Coliseum the last couple of years. I do think again the less grip allowed for more bumping and moving. I still felt like it basically was just a slam into the back of the person in front of you until they eventually move to hopefully be able to gain a spot or two. So again, ultimately, I don't necessarily know if my opinion on the Clash at these short quarter miles has really changed. I think you still need to be doing them in areas where you're reaching new fans and not just reaching back out to the same fans you've been a part of. Now, maybe if this was an all-star race with $1 million on the line, maybe you could make an argument. I think this was definitely better than the North Wilkesboro races, or at least the ones that I have seen so far. Obviously, I still think there's plenty of potential at North Wilkesboro, and obviously, this is a one race sample size so far for the Clash at Bowman Gray. I'd like to see Bowman Gray get a 3-year deal similar to what the LA Memorial Coliseum, so we can kind of get to know what its tendencies are, see if it really is a good race or not. But getting into the more specifics about this race again, you had your heat races on night one, which locked in 20 cars to the field. Then tonight, we got to see the LCQ where two drivers were able to race their way in. And after a lot of contact and Eric Jones being used as both using himself as a battering ram and then becoming having everybody else trying to battering ram through him, ultimately, it came out on the other end with two beaten and battered cars of Josh Berry and Kyle Larson, who were able to race their way into the field, and Ryan Blaney, who got in via the points provisional. Those were your three drivers who advanced into the main event tonight. And then we got to see a good 200 lap race. Again, in the first half, it was a bit jumbled up. The second half, there was certainly less cautions, although there was still definitely some. And since we're starting to talk about the main event, let's go ahead and throw up the leaderboard over there. So there are your top 15 finishers. And again, as I mentioned, it was a good race. Chase Elliott was able to lead over 150 laps and en route to a well-earned victory as he was able to win the heat race number one and was able to basically control most of the race. Although right before halfway, he did lose the lead to both Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick, but ultimately on the restarts, he was able to go ahead and earn his way back through the field and ultimately was able to go ahead and take the lead back. And then as he and Ryan Blaney ran away from each other, on the restart. It eventually came down to it was going to be whoever navigated their way through the lap traffic the best, and Chase Elliott was able to catch some lucky timings with when he passed Bowman, Byron, and Larson, that he was able to get through them a little bit quicker than Blaney. And ultimately, it came down to the pass on Christopher Bell, where Chase Elliott was able to pass Christopher Bell nice and easy, and Ryan Blaney got made just a little bit of contact with Christopher Bell as he tried to slide past him, and that little bit of contact separated the two out by about 3/4 of a second, allowing Chase Elliott to coast away to the win in the closing seconds of the race. Denny Hamlin was hanging back for the most part in a very close third place, basically just waiting for the most part to see if Blaney and Elliott would get into each other. Yeah, and if so, that would open the door. That would have opened the door for a Denny Hamlin comeback run, but ultimately that never happened. So then we had, as I say, we had Joey Logano hold on to a fourth place finish, who he managed to just barely squeak by Bubba Wallace at the end there. Again, that was just a case of Joey Logano having to come from deeper in the field. Again, the passing was not easy tonight, and again, Bubba Wallace, he was up 9 spots from where he started the race. So again, good on some of these drivers to make passes, and again, that just gives even more credit to what Ryan Blaney did, coming from 23rd all the way to second. Yeah, obviously Chase Elliott, good job with the win, but also starting up front definitely made his job a whole lot easier. Ross Chastain coming home in the 6th position. Felt like I was seeing him and SVG battling basically all night against each other. The two Trackhouse cars on track. We'll get to the other one in a moment. Austin Cindric in the 7th position. Yeah, coming home. Another driver who was having a nice quiet day. He and Kyle Busch got into it a little bit, but again, ultimately it was just minor contact that ultimately sent the 8 car around, which was not great. Then you had Tyler Reddick coming home in the 8th position. He had a really good run going, and then he got stuck on the outside of Bubba Wallace. Then Joey Logano stuffed his nose in. Then Cindric and Chastain both freight trained him. And ultimately, SVG ultimately gave him a spot in line. And that's where Tyler Reddick was able to run the rest of the night in 8th place. Speaking of SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, otherwise known as SVG, he comes home in the 9th position tonight, and ultimately it was definitely a good opening night for SVG. It was one of his first short ovals here in the NASCAR Cup Series, and again, we will get a chance to see what he's really got when we get around to the road courses of the season. But as an opener here for the NASCAR Cup Series on ovals for SVG, I think this was a very good opening performance, and I look forward to seeing what he can do when we get to some of the more traditional mile and a halfs, or even to Martinsville later this year. Yeah, as we've seen clearly, SVG has some skill on ovals, although we've also seen in the past success in the Clash doesn't necessarily translate to success in the regular season. Justin Haley in the 51. Yeah, because Haley had a lot of success at passing cars at the LA Coliseum, and really up until last year, he hadn't really shown a whole lot of that in the regular season. Obviously, last year was a career year for Haley, and he ended up getting a ride upgrade and an extension by Spire Motorsports. So again, not trying to call him out too much, but again, performance in the Clash is for the most part relative. Again, Chris Buescher hanging on to the top 10. Good job on him. And a massive credit, and I want to say this right now because of the next driver we're going to also talk about. The Roush Fenway Fords. In the 3 years at the LA Coliseum, with 2 cars per race, that equals 6 attempts at the race. They got 1 car into the main event. Here in Bowman Gray, they managed to go ahead and get all 3 cars in with 3 in the first year of the Clash here on the East Coast. So I don't know if it's something about this track, if maybe the short track program for Roush is just that much better this year or what, but Ryan Preece managing to come home 11th, and all 3 Roush cars getting into the field. Obviously, Brad Keselowski not pictured on this list as he ended up finishing 21st and a lap down. But Buescher and Priest both ending up right in and around the top 10. Buescher 10th and Priest 11th. Both great performances, and makes me look really forward to the potential of maybe Ryan Priest having a real shot at the playoffs, or at maybe winning a race and maybe even making the playoffs. Christopher Bell, 12th place was not representative of how he ran. He was in and around the top 5 or 6 most of the night. I think he got turned in the latter part of this race, and that ultimately is what set him back to 12th, and he ends up being the first car 1 lap off the pace. Josh Berry had to fight all night long through the Open. I think he spun 2 or 3 different cars in the LCQ, and then he ended up getting into the main event just barely, and he ends up putting up a pretty good performance here, all the way up into the 13th position. Again, up over 10 spots from where or up about 10 spots from where he started back in the 21st position or 22nd position. Todd Gilliland in first race in his new number. He had a very solid performance in his heat race yesterday, and a nice solid top 15 finish here for Gilliland tonight. And then talking about Kyle Busch. He was my pick coming into the night, and the dire curse has struck him again. And if you guys don't know what the dire curse is, it's a running joke in the Lap Down podcast. Link in the description to that if you guys want to hear me and some of my other friends talk more and more about NASCAR. But we do race picks over there each and every week. And my picks have a tendency of going wrong. And going wrong they did for Kyle Busch very early on in the race, about 20 laps in, and Kyle Busch gets spun out, ends up going to pit road, losing a lap, and then getting lapped a second time by Chase Elliott on the following run, as the following run went about 60, 70 laps without a caution flag. So, yeah, that was a really rough day for Kyle Busch. Ultimately, he recovers it very well to a top 15 day after the cautions that we did get in the second half. He ended up getting back on the lead lap and was able to fight his way all the way up to a top 15 finish. But a top 15 in a field of 23 is a lot less impressive than a top 15 in a normal race. So, again, those were the top finishers here in the night. I've kind of already talked a lot about the overall feeling on the Clash. Again, kind of my biggest thing when it comes to the Clash at Bowman Gray, and I said this about the Clash at the Coliseum, is I want to see it more than once before I give a hard yes or no on it. Again, I saw some things I liked tonight, and again, coming in, I was certainly not the biggest fan of the Clash at Bowman Gray. But I saw some things I liked. I saw some things that were concerning. I'm good with keeping it here for another year or two and then making a decision as to what to do with it going forward. But again, it's one of those things that if they go and move it again, I either want them to establish it as hey, we're going to be rotating this every 2 to 3 years and picking locations that are geared towards new fans, or finding a track that can host the Clash long term like Daytona used to. Maybe this would be the opportunity to reach back out to Eldora or another dirt track to maybe try and make the first race of the season a dirt race. Maybe this is where you reach out to some of the other smaller tracks that run the NASCAR Weekly Series and try and partner up with one of those. Maybe a Stafford Speedway up in Connecticut. Maybe I don't know any out in but something like the Irwindale Speedway, which recently closed, I believe. I think that's the name of the track at least. But yeah, there was a track out in California that recently ran their final race. So tracks like that might be the future of the Clash again. It's one of those things that I want to wait and see how the Bowman Gray crowd shows up the next couple of years. But again, this year certainly exceeded my expectations, and I'm very much impressed. So good job to Bowman Gray. If I had to give it a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say this was a solid 7, maybe even a 7.5. But yeah, again, I think there's definitely room to be improved. There's things that I like, there's things that I didn't like. So again, I think somewhere around a 7, 7.5, I think is about right for a grade again out of 10 for this Clash. So again, the Clash, ultimately, nobody's going to remember this 2 weeks from now when we go and race Daytona. So we're heading on to Daytona, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. I will have a lot more content coming down the line. Again, we got Daytona Speed Week where I will be streaming 5 days in a row. Wednesday qualifying, Thursday duels, trucks, Xfinity, and Cup, Friday through Sunday. Again, all of this weather permitting. But until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next video. Live stream, whatever you guys decide to do with the rest of your day. Have a great day, everybody, and goodbye!